Hey everyone, Spicy Toast Gaming here. I hope you're having a great day, and I hope this video can make it a little bit better. Today we're giving you some relic suggestions for the different breakpoints while you're leveling. So at level 1, what do you want to use for your first common relic? Level 8, when you get your first rare relic, what you want to be using. And then level 13, when you have a rare relic and a common relic slot, what you want to put in there. So we'll be going through, listing every single champion and giving you some suggestions. Now, if you appreciate all the daily Path of Champions content, a like and subscribe is greatly appreciated, and let's get into it. So up first, we will be talking about Aatrox, but actually we're going to be going through some general relic selections that work well on every single champion. So for your first common relic, doesn't matter what champion you're playing, one of these is going to be pretty good for you. So up first, we have a Cosmic Blessing. Now, this is a greater one, but if you have just a normal Cosmic Blessing, if you're wanting to level up your champion as fast as possible, then you're just going to want to immediately throw on a XP relic. So it doesn't really matter what other relics you have available. This is what you're going to want to throw on right away if you're just wanting to level your champion as fast as possible. Now, if you don't have any of these or you don't want to use them right away, then the Chameleon's Necklace is another great option to throw on your champion. So game start, create 2 copies of me in your deck. You're not going to have the guaranteed champion draw that you get at level 20. So just making sure you have more copies of your champion so you can actually play with them is very good to throw on for your first relic slot. Next up then, the Star Child Staff. So game start, heal your Nexus 5. So just every single match that you're going into, immediately heal your Nexus 5 is pretty massive and can really carry you through a lot of adventures when you are a lot weaker. It lets you take a lot more damage and still survive. When you're first starting out, you only have 20 Nexus health and you don't have any revives. So making sure you're actually able to heal up after every single match is very important. So Star Child Staff, great relic to throw on to really make sure you're able to clear those early adventures, because normally the difference between actually completing it and ending partway through is pretty massive. So Star Child Staff, another great option for you to be able to throw on your champion. Last up then, the Z Drive prototype. Start adventures with 2 or more rerolls. Just making sure you can get some of the right powers to really synergize with your champion. Again, as you level up your champion through the champion levels, you normally get some extra rerolls, but when you're starting out, you have very few. So making sure you can actually reroll to try to get some of those better powers is very helpful. So any of these 4 relics, these 3 plus the XP one, is what I'd actually throw on for the first relic slot for your champion. So those were some of the general common relics. Now, as far as some just general rare relics, before we go into the specifics for each individual champion, for any champion you're playing, these are some solid pickups. So Corrupted Star Fragment support, kill my supported ally, grant me its keywords and stats. This is fantastic for pretty much any champion, being able to just buff them up, make them your win condition. This is very good. Now, we will still be shouting each of these out if they're very good for a specific champion, but just in case you don't have some of the relics we might be shouting out later, this is another one just to throw on pretty much any champion you have. Turn them into your win condition, just a solid general relic. Now we have the 2 strike relics. So Stalker's Blade, when I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. Again, giving you good value, just you play your champion, they're normally going to be killing the weakest enemy unit. There are some champions that synergize very well with this, but most champions, you can just throw this on and get value from it. So another just generally good relic to throw on if you don't have some of the rare relics we're going to mention in the future. And then last up, the Curator's Gatebreaker, -1 power, play, I strike the enemy Nexus. So a little bit weaker than the Stalker's Blade in the fact that it's reducing down your power, and this is a play effect, not a summon effect, but you are able to hit the enemy Nexus. So it can still be a good relic to just throw on pretty much any champion if you just want to be able to get some value. And again, you don't have some of the other rare relics we're going to suggest. That is it for the general relic recommendations. Now we'll be going champion by champion and listing what you want to pick up for your first rare relic and your first rare relic, common relic combination. Again, you unlock your first rare relic at level 8. Now for Aatrox, our recommendation for your first rare relic would either be Crown Guard Inheritance, Stalker's Blade, or Berserker's Buckle. Aatrox has a very powerful level up condition. When he levels, he then gets a lot of stats, and now your Darkin allies cost 5 less. So you can very quickly end the game. So Crown Guard Inheritance, good for finishing off the games. You level him up, play all these Darkin for free, and then you just immediately rush down the enemy. Good pickup for your first rare relic slot. Stalker's Blade, also solid. Aatrox has a lot of strike synergy, so being able to drop him on the board, immediately get a strike off. Again, very, very good. And then the Berserker's Buckle, very good for your Aatrox because he is going to get regen from the Darkin Blade. So he's going to be pretty tanky, able to scale up. And then also from his champion spell, you're able to get potentially 3 different strikes off from this one spell if you play the full combination. So you can really scale Aatrox like crazy. So as far as your first rare relic, I would grab one of these for your Aatrox. Now, as far as common relics to pair with Aatrox, the Chameleon's Necklace will be pretty good. Aatrox often can be your win condition, the way to close out the game. So getting more copies of him is pretty good. So yeah, Chameleon's Necklace, nice to pick up and pair with whatever rare relic you are using. And then Banshee's Veil, that spell shield. Since Aatrox is your main win condition, if you want to be sure you can protect him, throwing on a Banshee's Veil isn't bad. I think I would prefer the Chameleon's Necklace and just try to pick up spell shield throughout the run. But if you want that little bit of safety, that is what you could pick up. Moving on then, we have Annie. So for the first rare relic that you want to be using, Archangel Staff, pretty good round start refill your spell mana. Since Annie is a 1 cost, you can get her on the board and have her on the board normally like the entire game. So making sure that she can just be constantly giving you that mana for your spells, very nice to pick up. The Grand General's counter plan, round start, create a fleeting copy of me in hand. This is giving you some safety because if your Annie then does die, you then have this fleeting copy you can then play to kind of make sure she's always on the board. And then if you think she's safe for the round, you can actually play the champion spell, the Disintegrate, great for being able to kill high health targets. I think the Archangel Staff is probably going to be a better pickup for you overall, but still a solid option. And then we have the Luden's Tempest. All of your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. This is essentially just giving you another level to her star powers. It is pretty good. I think I would still go with Archangel Staff being the best first option for you for your rare relic slot, but all of these are pretty solid. Now, for your first combination of rare relic plus common relic, this will be at level 13. Chameleon's Necklace is still very good. Game start, create 2 copies of me in your deck. That way you can try to make sure you have your Annie in your opening hand so you can play her to get the Archangel Staff or whatever relic you're using active round 1 and try to keep that active throughout most of the game. So Chameleon's Necklace is very good, probably the one that I would definitely use. But you could also use like Lost Chapter, play, refill your spell mana. If you're not running Archangel Staff, maybe running a different relic, this could also be a good common one just to try to make sure you have some extra mana to play some of your spells. And then once again, Spell Shield is actually not a bad pickup, especially for Annie, since she's a very weak champion, very easy to kill. So having a little bit of safety isn't bad there if you want that. Moving on then, we have Ashe. So for your first rare relic, the Grand General's counter plan, round start, create a fleeting copy of me in hand. Very good, not normally needed to use as a safety net. Your Ashe is going to be a lot harder to kill than like your Annie, but Ashe's champion spell is the Flash Freeze, so generating one of these every single round that your Ashe is on the board, very nice, giving you a lot higher amount of control. So that's definitely a solid option for your first rare relic. Can also go for the Archangel Staff, round start to refill your spell mana. That way you can try to have the mana to play some of your other spells. It is a little bit awkward. Both of these pair very well together, but for your first rare relic slot, you're going to have to choose kind of one or the other. I would go towards Grand General's counter plan, but Archangel Staff is still a solid pickup. But remember, there are those rare relics we recommended earlier, just the generalist pickups like Corrupted Star Fragment or Stalker's Blade. Both of them would also be pretty good just to throw on your Ashe to give you some value. Now, as far as the common relic you want to pair with your rare relic at level 13, Archangel Staff and Chameleon Necklace is pretty good. This way, this is giving you mana, and the Chameleon's Necklace is going to make sure you have more Ashe in your deck, so you're more likely to draw her, have it converted into her champion spell, that Flash Freeze, so you can play it. So these pair pretty well together, but if you don't want to go for the Archangel Staff, going for the Grand General's counter plan and the Lost Chapter to, again, play your Ashe, have her refill your spell mana, so that you can actually play the fleeting, or at least one fleeting card that she's going to be making, her champion spell, that 3-cost Flash Freeze. So what you use for your common relic will be determined by what you wanted to use for your first rare relic. Next up then, we have Aurelion Sol. So for your first relic, I would suggest using Crownguard Inheritance when I level up Rally. As long as you have Aurelion Sol's first star power, when you play him or any of your other champions, they're going to immediately level up. So these level up relics are very good. So when I level up Rally, so you immediately play Aurelion Sol, level up Rally, you can then attack and try to end the game. Or you can go for the Deceiver's Crest. When I level up, create a copy of my champion spell in hand. It costs 0 this round. Now, kind of pointless if you have Aurelion Sol at 4 stars, but if you don't, this is then going to make your Skies descend. You can play this for free when you play Aurelion Sol, which deals 15 damage to all enemies. So essentially, you can play Aurelion Sol, he'll just nuke the entire board. So one of these two is definitely what I'd pick up for your first rare relic slot. Now, as far as your common relic slot, you really want to go with the Z Drive prototype. Start adventures with 2 or more rerolls. With Aurelion Sol, it's very important you get the right powers, specifically any power that gives you a created card at the start of the round. So being able to have some extra rerolls in order to fish for those powers is pretty important. So pretty much anytime you have a common slot open on Aurelion Sol, you want to throw in a Z Drive prototype to get those extra rerolls there. Next up then, we have Bard. So for your first rare relic slot, you want to be going with either Corrupted Star Fragment or the Berserker's Buckle. Both these are good general relics, but they also help contribute to Bard's level up. You've increased the total stats of allies in play or in hand by 20 or more. Both these effects contribute to that level up, so they help level up Bard very quickly. Now, Corrupted Star Fragment is definitely better for Bard, but if you don't have that, the Berserker's Buckle is also pretty good. Now, for your common slot, you could go for like the Rage Blade, attack, grant me 1/1. Again, gives you some more scaling and help contribute to your level up, but also going with the Chameleon's Necklace, create 2 copies of me in your deck. Really nice to make sure you actually can play your Bard, because he's going to be giving you a lot of your power, and especially with Corrupted Star Fragment, end up being your win condition. But also, if you already have Bard in play and you draw another one, you really like his champion spell, really good, and extra copies of him also synergizes with his origin. So round start, if you have 3 or more mana gems, plant a chime in your deck, and this is increased for each bard that started the game in your deck. So having more bards in your deck increases your passive chime generation. So Chameleon's Necklace, very good for any time you get a common relic slot on your bard. Next up, we have Darius, and he is a bit of an interesting one. So if you want to go for a rare relic, Crown Guard Inheritance is pretty fun when I level up Rally. Now, Darius is all about rallying, putting the pressure on the enemy. So being able to just drop him as another rally can be pretty good, because he should level up by the time you play him, or at least be close. So that is a good option for a rare relic slot. But Darius can actually be very passive, and you can just play him with full common relics, and that's actually a valid build for him. The 2 best common relics for him is Z Drive Prototype and Star Child Staff. With Darius, you don't really want to be taking blocks, and so you're normally going to be taking a lot of damage every game. So making sure you can still heal up at the end of the game with Star Child Staff, very, very good. And Z Drive Prototype, making sure you get like the best powers, best support champion, those sorts of things. That really helps your Darius feel a lot more powerful. So being sure you go for Z Drive Prototype, very good. So while you can use rare relics, you really might just want to run with multiple commons instead, and that actually will potentially make your Darius feel even better. So even at level 13, when you have a common relic and a rare relic unlocked, you might just want to not use a rare relic, just use 2 commons, and that is actually a valid strategy for your Darius. Next up then, we have Diana. So for Diana, your first rare relic slot, going for the Grand General's Counter Plan or the Troll King's Crown is both very good. So Troll King's Crown, allies have Overwhelm. Since Diana is a 2 cost, you can have her on the board most of the game, and Diana's very aggressive. Making sure all units have the Overwhelm to try to rush down the enemy early is very simple, straightforward, but quite powerful. As far as a rare relic though, the counter plan is solid. Diana's champion spell is incredibly good. Give an ally 1/1 this round, Nightfall, draw 1. And then since this is a champion spell, shuffling the Diana into your deck. Great for triggering your Nightfall, scaling up your units, giving you some more draw. All around just a fantastic spell, and not that expensive. So generating one of those every single round is quite good. So either of these would be great for your first relic slot. As far as common relics to pair it with, so the Grand General's Counter Plan, if you want to go down that route, going for Lost Chapter would be pretty solid to make sure you actually have the mana to play your champion spells. Chameleon's Necklace, also very good, especially since Diana is a cheap champion. So making sure you have her in your opening hand and can play her, great. If you get more copies of her, her champion spell is fantastic. So again, very good pickup right there. Also the Troll King's Crusher, if you again don't go for the Overwhelm for all your units, just making sure your Diana has Overwhelm, also a pretty good pickup. And then last up, Banshee's Veil. If you want to just try to protect your Diana, Banshee's Veil, great to give you that little bit of a safety net. Normally not needed quite as much if you're running the Grand General's Counter Plan, since you can just buff her up with her champion spell. But again, if you just want to make sure your champion stays safe and doesn't die, this can be pretty good for that as well. Next up, we have Ekko. Now with Ekko, very spell-based champion, has a lot of very powerful kind of combo spells. So for your first rare relic, Chemtech Duplicator is pretty good. when you play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems, copy it with the same targets. Now, he's a 4-cost champion, so 6 mana gems isn't very far away from that. Often you'll play him for 4, you have 1 round for 5 mana, and then the next round, your Chemtech duplicator will be active. So definitely not a bad pickup for your first rare relic. Could also go for a Stalker's Blade. When I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. Now, he has a strike effect, create a time trick in hand. So you see predict, then draw 1. Very solid for you. So being able to strike and immediately get your predictions going, that is quite helpful. So Stalker's Blade, another great pickup. And then last up, Archangel Staff, round start, refill your spell mana. Since you are playing a lot of spells, trying to make sure you have the spell mana to play them is also very helpful. So any of these would be a great pickup for your first rare relic. Now, as far as some common relics to pair with whatever your first rare relic is, Z-Drive prototype, start adventures with 2 more rerolls. Making sure you get the right powers on Ekko can be fairly important, especially when you're just starting out. So wouldn't be bad to throw that on. Chameleon's Necklace, getting more copies of your Ekko, really good. He is fairly fragile, so having some backup Echoes to be able to play them is very good, but also his champion spell is very powerful, so getting more copies of that is definitely helpful. And then Lost Chapter, play, refill your spell mana. Very good, especially if you would pair this with like the Stalker's Blade. So you would strike, create that fleeting time trick in hand, and then you'd have the spell mana to actually be able to play it right away. So Lost Chapter, another solid pickup. Elder Dragon, pretty simple and straightforward. I really like the strike relics on him. He does have this massive stat line, so either just chunking the enemy nexus with Gatebreaker or killing the weakest enemy target with Stalker's Blade. Both of these, very simple, but quite satisfying to use. Or you have Troll King's Crown, allies have Overwhelm, just so you can play your Elder Dragon and very quickly just end the game with all your units just annihilating the enemy nexus. So Elder Dragon for your first rare relic, I would go with one of these. As far as a common relic to pair with your rare relic, the Troll King's Crusher, very good just to give your Elder Dragon Overwhelm if you're not using the Troll King's Crown, just so all units have Overwhelm. While Elder Dragon does get a lot of keywords, Overwhelm is not one of them, so making sure he has that is quite nice. And then Spell Shield is also a pretty good pickup. Again, Elder Dragon gets a lot of keywords. Spell Shield isn't one of them, and sometimes you're going to be able to use Elder Dragon to end the game, but then the enemy is just able to stun him, frostbite him, recall him, and shut him down before he becomes unstoppable. So giving him that little bit of protection, since he is your win condition, is pretty good. Once he's on the board, you don't want them to be able to get him off the board. Elise is up next. So for your first rare relic, Corrupted Star Fragment, very good. You do have some synergy for killing your own units with your second star power. If you have a unit die, you then summon a Spiderling. So Corrupted Star Fragment does have some pretty good synergies, help buff up your Elise, make her pretty powerful. Troll King's Crown, making sure all your units have Overwhelm. Very nice right there. And then last up, Voidborn Carapace, so Evolve. When any unit dies, grant me its keywords. Now, this is one that is more important if you have Elise at 3 stars, so that she's able to give her Spiderlings all of her keywords. If you have that, then this is a great pickup. But if you don't have her at 3 stars, then probably want to hold off on this one. As far as a common relic to pair with your other rare relics, Chameleon's Necklace, again, very good. Pretty much on any cheap champion, there's a high likelihood you want to go for Chameleon's Necklace, just so you have a higher likelihood of being able to play them at the start of the game. So Chameleon's Necklace, absolutely fantastic. Also, her champion spell is very useful. So even if you have extra copies of Elise in your hand, they're not like dead cards. They're still going to really be helping you out. Now, if you have Elise at 3 stars, so that when she attacks, she's able to give her keywords to all of her Spiderlings, your common relic selection is very interesting, because a lot of the common relics are just able to be keywords. So if you have Elise at 3 stars, then Dreams of Yordles is fantastic, because every time you attack, you then give your Spiderlings the Spirit and Impact. So essentially you're boosting them every single time you're attacking. So specifically, if you have Elise at 3 stars, Dreams of Yordles is very, very good. Next up then we have Evelynn, and with Evelynn it's pretty simple and straightforward. You want to use any of the level up relics if you have them. So with Evelynn, she's able to level up multiple times throughout the course of the game, so she can trigger these relics multiple times, whereas most champions can only trigger them once. So kind of in order of importance, we have Tempest Blade. When I level up, stun all enemies. Very good for letting you keep getting your scaling off and just shutting down the enemy. This is going to be more important than the Crown Guard Inheritance, which when I level up Rally. While that is good, fairly often there's going to be times where you're just overriding your attack token because it's not really safe to attack before you've actually leveled up your Evelynn. So while this is good, Tempest Blade is definitely better to pick up or use if you have it. Then last up, the Deceiver's Crest. When I level up, create a copy of my champion spell in hand. It costs 0 this round. So her champion spell, stop all enemy spells and skills targeting Evelynn, and she strikes an enemy. So it's a good safety net and a way to essentially freely take out an enemy target every time Evelynn levels up. So you want to use one of these for your first rare relic slot, and yeah, I would go down this as the order of importance if you have these available. As far as the common relic you want to pair with it, Chameleon's Necklace is incredibly important. Evelynn is your main win condition. She's kind of what your entire deck is built around. If you don't have Evelynn, you'll probably lose. So making sure you get more copies of her so you can play her is incredibly important. This is definitely what you want to be using for any time you have a common relic slot open. Next up then, we have Garen. So for your first rare relic, Stalker's Blade or Gatebreaker. I think Stalker's Blade is probably a little bit better for you, but either of the strike relics works. When I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. So Garen's level up condition is I've struck twice, and his star powers are scaling when you strike. So using strike relics, very important. So I would definitely go for one of them if you have them available. But some other options if you don't want to go down that route. Crown Guard Inheritance when I level up Rally. This is obviously Garen's signature relic, and it does work out pretty well. So being able to level up after you've struck twice and then attack again. It's fairly easy to plan your level up and make full use of the Crown Guard Inheritance. So another good common relic to go with, or the Blade Rack. Allies have Challenger. So this is going to give your entire board Challenger while Garen's on the board. Really good for being able to make sure your units are all getting the best trades possible so they can actually freely attack, get those strikes off, and scale up. So another good pickup for your first rare relic. But I would personally go for the Stalker's Blade if you have that available. So some decent common relics to pair with whatever your rare relic is. Lost Chapter is pretty good. Play Refill Your Spell Mana. If you have Garen at 2 stars, he makes a single combat every single round, which is a 2-cost spell. So making sure you can play Garen and then still have mana to play some of your spells is quite nice. True Ice Flail, also pretty good. When I'm summoned, give enemies vulnerable this round. This is only really going to be good if you're able to attack that round. But then you're essentially giving everyone vulnerable so you can challenge all the units to just get the best attack in. So if you're not running with the Blade Rack, giving all your units Challenger, this is a good way to kind of have that for at least a specific round. So you can really try to turn this round to your advantage, make sure you're getting all the best trades, and then just dominate the board from that point forward. And then last up, Troll King's Crusher. Overwhelm, if you can't give this to your whole board, at least giving it to your Garen. He's normally going to be your biggest unit, so making sure he can actually punch through and deal damage to the enemy nexus is pretty good. Next up then, we have Gnar. So for your first rare relic, Dreadway Chase Gun. When I'm summoned, create 2 warning shots in hand. You see 0 cost, deal 1 to the enemy nexus. This is pretty good. Gnar is all about dealing damage to the enemy nexus at least 1 time per round. Making sure you have 2 free ways to do that is pretty good. Troll King's Crown, allies have Overwhelm. You do have a decent amount of Overwhelm already. Gnar has it half the time. He has at least one other unit that also has Overwhelm. But Gnar is all about ending the game as fast as possible. So making sure your whole board has Overwhelm to try to do the maximum amount of damage is pretty good. And then Scourge's Stash, Plunder, I cost 2 less. Since Gnar's whole kit is about dealing damage to the enemy nexus, getting the Plunder off isn't that difficult, and trying to get Gnar on the board a little bit earlier can be quite nice. He's a little bit weak for a 4 cost, feels a lot better if you can play him down for a 2 cost. So Scourge's Stash, also a decent pickup for your first rare relic. Now, as far as your common relic to pair with whatever rare relic you're running, Rageblade, attack, grant me 1/1. Actually pretty good for your Gnar. Kind of a weak champion as far as stats, so being able to scale that up throughout the course of a game, pretty good. You are going to be trying to end games as fast as possible, but that's not going to be that easy when you are lower level. So you will be getting a decent amount of attacks in, so scaling up your Gnar, not too bad. Also going for the Challenger, pretty good. Gnar has Quick Attack, so Quick Attack Challenger is a very deadly combo. So pairing those both together to make sure Gnar can choose exactly who he wants to attack and be able to kill them with a quick attack without taking any damage back. Another good combination to go with. Last up then, we have the Lost Chapter, play Refill Your Spell Mana. Gnar has a lot of spells in his kit, so making sure you actually have the ability to play those spells when you drop your Gnar, also pretty good pickup right there. Next up then, we have Gwen. So for your first rare relic slot for Gwen, Crown Guard Inheritance I think is definitely the best pickup when I level up Rally. This is very good for Gwen because normally you can attack, you get a large temporary buff from your Hallow that lasts for the round. So you attack with that, you level up, and then since you rally, you still have that attack buff because it's still for the round. You can attack again, stack it up again, and normally be able to end the game. So Crown Guard Inheritance, excellent. Luden's Tempest, all of your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. So for Gwen, when she levels up, she has a skill that, similar to Kaisa, it does damage in increments of 1. And so by increasing its damage by 1, you're essentially doubling the damage. So normally by doing this, that skill alone can end up destroying the enemy nexus as well as healing you back up. So very good pickup right there. And then Troll King's Crown, Allies of Overwhelm. Since you are attacking with this large attack pool, you don't want to get blocked out, but at least with Overwhelm, if you get blocked out, you're still able to do damage to the enemy nexus. So all of these work out incredibly well for Gwen. So for your first rare relic slot, I would use one of these. As far as common relics to pair it with, I'd either go for Chameleon's Necklace or Banshee's Veil. Gwen is your main win condition, so having more copies of her in your deck so you can be sure you can play her right away is very important. So Chameleon's Necklace is very important for that. And then since she's your main win condition, you don't want her dying, so giving her just a little bit of extra protection with the Banshee's Veil also feels very good. Next up then, we have Illaoi. So similar to Gwen, Crown Guard Inheritance is very good, and pretty much for the exact same reason as it's good for Gwen. Illaoi has a attack that boosts her up for the round, and so being able to attack with these boosted stats, level up, rally from the Crown Guard Inheritance, then attack again, doubling the stat increase from your attack effect, very, very good. So Crown Guard Inheritance, pretty much the best relic for Illaoi. Definitely pick this up. But if you don't have it or you don't want to play with it, Green Glade Shadeleaf is a fun alternative. So support, grant my supported ally elusive. You can use this on your tentacle so it can go through and still hit the enemy nexus. Now, Illaoi has Overwhelm by default, so she's still going to be able to do damage to the enemy nexus, but making sure your tentacle has a way to also deal damage is pretty good. Now, as far as a common relic to pair with it, Chameleon's Necklace, create 2 copies of me in your deck. Similar to many of our other champions, Illaoi is your main win condition, so you really want to be able to play them. So having the extra copies in your deck to increase the odds you draw them and can play them, very important. And then Rageblade attack, grant me 1/1. With Illaoi, you're all about attacking and getting this massive attack buff. So scaling up even more with the Rageblade, very good. Another fun common relic to throw on for your Illaoi. Jack is up next. So for your first rare relic slot, Stalker's Blade, when I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. Pretty good for your Jack. You do have strike synergy of striking, then creating a coin in hand. You're all about refilling your mana, which the coins also are able to do. So Stalker's Blade, very good pickup right there. But Archangel Staff, round start, refill your spell mana. Since your whole kit is based around refilling spell mana or refilling mana, being able to do that every single round is pretty good. You have a lot of spells as well, so making sure you have the freedom to play them is quite solid. Now, as far as common relics to pair together, Lost Chapter is great. Not only does this refill your spell mana, but with Jack, especially if you have him at 3 stars, when you refill your mana, you're able to deal 1 damage to the entire enemy board. So Lost Chapter kind of works like Ravenous Hydra of when I'm summoned, deal 1 to all enemies. So very good common relic to throw on, even if you don't have the 3-star, but especially if you do have the 3-star. As far as another common relic to throw on, Warmog's Armor actually isn't too bad. With Jack, you'll end up normally taking a lot of damage, so being able to heal up at the end of the round, pretty good. Definitely would say Lost Chapter is better, but another relic to try out if you want. Janna is up next, so for your first rare relic, some different options you can go with. Up first, Luden's Tempest. All of your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. For Janna, you actually end up relying on your removal spells quite a lot, so boosting them a little bit more is solid. Scourge's Stash, Plunder, I cost 2 less. You do have many different ways to trigger Plunder for Janna. It's not quite as consistent as some other decks, but this is going to make her a cost-reduced card, helping you get her on the board a little bit earlier, which is very important. Janna really is key to your success. All of your star powers trigger from playing cost reduced card, and for Janna, the Scourge's Stash would not only make her a cost reduced card, but each round the first 3 times you draw a card, reduce its cost by 1. Then if she levels, just all of the cards you draw are cost reduced for the round. So her further increase in your cost reduction is very, very good. You want to get her on the board as early as possible, so Scourge's Stash definitely helps there. And then Chemtech Duplicator. When you play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems, copy it with the same targets. Now, normally, when you get your Janna at a higher level, you're able to end games consistently before the 6 mana mark. So this is one you're not really going to want to use later on, but especially for your first rare relic slot when games are probably going a little bit longer, this can be a great way to help you close out the game. Now, as far as some common relics to pair with your rare relic, Lost Chapter, play refill your spell mana. With Janna, you have a lot of spells, so making sure you can play some of those when you play your Janna is pretty good. But more importantly, the Chameleon's Necklace, game start, create 2 copies of me in your deck. Like I said before, Janna is your main win condition. She's giving you so much value just being on your board. You want to be sure you can have her on your board as soon as possible. Making sure you have some more copies of her, very, very good. So Chameleon's Necklace is probably the best pickup for your common relic slot, but some others like Lost Chapter are decent as well. Next up then, we have Jax. So for your first rare relic slot for Jax, going for something to increase his stats like Corrupted Star Fragment or even a stat relic like Warhammer is pretty good. Jack often can be killed like right at the start of the game, and he's your main card you want to be playing and having on your board the entire game. He can normally scale up and just do a ton of damage. So going for like Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my support ally, grant me its keywords and stats, just further improving your Jax, making him better and better. Really good. Again, just any flat stat relic, actually not bad, just to make sure he can survive the early game and keep scaling. Or Blade Rack, allies have Challenger. Making sure all your units are getting the best trades possible is very nice. So any of these would work for your first rare relic. As far as your common relics, there's a couple different ways you can go. So Chameleon's Necklace, to make sure you have more copies of Jax so you can play him round 1, very good. Challenger, good. You're already going to get quick attack with your equipment from Jax, so having the quick attack Challenger combo, also very solid. Rage Blade, pretty good, because with Jax, you're trying to do many attacks. You're going to be having him on the board round 1, hopefully. So he's going to get a lot of attacks in, so further scaling him up with the Rage Blade. Also very good. Banshee's Veil or the Armadillo Shell for some more survivability. A lot of different ways you can approach playing your Jax. A lot of the common relics actually work quite well on him. Next up then, we have Jhin. So for your first rare relic, Riptide Battery, pretty good. Plunder, play Cannon Barrage a number of times equal to my cost. So Cannon Barrage, this counts as a skill, which works for Jhin and all of his effects that scale off of your skills. It's like his level up condition as well as his star powers. So Riptide Battery is pretty good. Once you get Jhin high enough, you can use your Gatebreaker to automatically trigger it when you play your Jhin, but since you only have one rare relic, that doesn't really work here. So this can be fun, but remember you do have that Plunder effect, so you have to trigger that before you play your Jhin. A little bit more difficult to work around. Definitely scales better later on when you have more relics, but still a solid pickup. Archangel Staff, round start, refill your spell mana. This is good, especially if you don't have Jhin at 3 stars. When you have Jhin at 3 stars, he's able to make those captive audience for free. Then Archangel Staff isn't as needed, but especially if you have Jhin at 1 or 2 stars and those captive audience are still costing that like 2 mana, Archangel Staff is then very important. And then last up, Tempest Blade, when I level, stun all enemies. This is very good if you can time it with your attack. So he has a attack when he's leveled of deal 4 to all stunned enemies and the enemy nexus. So you can level up, stun all units, and then attack. You'll pretty much just wipe the board. So some very interesting pickups that you can try for Jhin for your first rare relic slot. As far as some common relics to pair with your first rare relic, so Z-Drive prototypes start eventually with 2 or more rerolls. Jhin, you really do want to get some of the correct powers. So being able to have some extra rerolls in order to get that is pretty good. Everfrost, when I'm summoned, stun the strongest enemy. With Jhin, you do have a decent amount of stun synergy, and you kind of want to be controlling the board. So being able to have a little bit of extra control with your Jhin, not bad. And then Lost Chapter, play refill your spell mana. Also very good since you have so many spells with your Jhin, especially again if you don't have him at 3 stars. Next up then, we have Jinx. So for your first rare relic slot, you want to be using the Loose Cannon's payload if you have it. So when I'm summoned, discard your hand, which automatically levels up your Jinx, and then create that many Pow Pows in hand, which you can see right here. With Jinx, she's able to get some cost reduction for this, so it goes down to a 1 cost, but very good, just immediately levels up your Jinx and gives you all these removal spells, and does a ton of damage from your star powers from discarding your whole hand. So very good to pick up if you have it. Scourge of Stash, Plunder, I cost 2 less. You can trigger the Plunder incredibly easy with your Jinx. You just have to play literally any card. So being able to get your Jinx on the board a little bit earlier, also very solid. As far as the common relic you want to be pairing with Jinx, So the Chameleon's Necklace, game start, create 2 copies of me in your deck. Especially if you're running the Loose Cannons payload, you really want to be playing your Jinx right at that 4 mana. So making sure you have her to play her, very, very good, because she will completely swing the game in your direction. So going for the Chameleon's Necklace and Loose Cannons payload, very good. Even if you're going for the Scourge's Stash, I still think the Chameleon's Necklace is really the best way to go. Next up then, we have Kai'Sa. So for your first rare relic, couple different choices. 1, Troll King's Crown, allies have Overwhelm. Really good, just in general. But for Kai'Sa, you want all of your units to have as many keywords as possible. So for both Troll King's Crown and the Blade Rack, just giving your whole board a keyword is really good. And then both Overwhelm and Challenger are solid, so either of these is a good pickup for your Kai'Sa. Also, Luden's Tempest, all of your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. Similar to Gwen, when Kai'Sa levels, she has a attack effect that deals damage in increments of 1. Being able to double that damage with Luden's Tempest is absolutely massive, so definitely a good pickup right there. And then one last rare relic that's a little bit more of a meme, but can be helpful, especially when you're first leveling up your Kai'Sa. The Voidborn Carapace Evolve, which doesn't help you as much since you already have that, but when any unit dies, grant me its keywords. This can be helpful to help scale up your Kai'Sa, because anytime one of your units die, the enemy units, any unit, Kai'Sa gets the keywords, so you can scale her up a lot faster through this. Still think I'd probably go for Luden's Tempest or one of the other keyword relics, but it can be fun as well. As far as common relics to pair with it, a couple different options. Dreams of Yordles isn't bad because it's giving you 2 keywords, so that alone, really good. There's a bunch of other relics, common relics, that also give you keywords, so you could go for any of those. Dreams of Yordle's probably the best, just the fact that it gives you 2 of them. But going for like Chameleon's Necklace, game start, create 2 copies from your deck, also always solid. For Kai'Sa, she is a 5 cost, so normally you can try to draw her before you need to play her. So Chameleon's Necklace does lose out a little bit of value compared to many other champions. Next up then, we have Kayn. So for Kayn, I would highly recommend going for a Stalker's Blade for your first rare relic, if at all possible. So when I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. So his level up, similar to Garen, is I've struck twice, and then when I level up, recall me. So when he gets recalled, he then goes to a 0 cost. You can then play him again for free and then choose kind of what way you want to go for him. Rost, which is the correct answer, or the Shadow Assassin. So you can get this going off essentially twice and gives you progress towards your level up, but also you want to be able to kill enemy units with your Kayn. Well, any units with your Kayn, really, but preferably enemy units. So Stalker's Blade, being able to try to get a kill when you play him, very good to help him scale up. In general, very solid option, highly recommend going with that. If you don't have it though, or don't want to play it, Berserker's Buckle, when I survive damage, grant me 2/2. With Kayn, especially with that Challenger, you're normally going to be taking a good amount of damage, so being able to constantly scale up off of that damage, very solid. And then Blade Rack, allies have Challenger. Making sure your whole board is getting the best trades, getting kills, and surviving is very important. So Blade Rack, also a solid pickup for your first rare relic. Now, as far as common relics to pair with it, going for a stat relic such as like Soul Spear, or even the Dreams of Yordles, because that spirit gives you a 1/1. Either of these could be pretty good. With Kayn, his stats are fairly weak, and with the Stalker's Blade, you want to be able to get a kill. So just boosting up his attack at all through like a Soul Spear or Dreams of Yordles wouldn't be bad to try to make sure he can actually get a kill. So that would be solid right there. Like most champions though, Kayn is your main win condition, so also throwing out a Chameleon's Necklace just to get more copies of him also can be fairly solid. That being said though, since he gets recalled, you can actually trigger a lot of these summon or play effects more than once. So if you wanted to go for like a Lost Chapter or Ravenous Hydra, wouldn't be that bad because he gets kind of twice the effect. Since he levels, he gets recalled, you play him again for free. So yeah, being able to trigger these multiple times does increase their value a good amount. Everfrost is the same when I'm summoned, stun the strongest enemy. So just any of these summon or play effects, just know Kayn can trigger them multiple times, so they do increase in value a little bit. Kindred is up next, so for your first rare relic, Stalker's Blade is pretty good. When I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. Kindred is all about killing a unit and then marking the next weakest and then killing them at the end of the round. So being able to drop Kindred, get a kill, hopefully mark another target to get another kill is pretty solid. Corrupted Star Fragment support, kill my supported ally, grant me its keywords and stats. For Kindred, if you want to really focus on scaling up your Kindred, having them be your main win condition and being able to just rely on your marks every round, Corrupted Star Fragment is pretty good. This counts as you slaying a unit, so by killing one of your own units, you then are marking the enemy unit. Overall, Corrupted Star Fragment has some pretty good synergies with Kindred. And then last up, Guardian Angel. Start adventures with 1 extra revive, so that's nice. And then last breath. If it's the first time I've been slain this game, revive me with 1 health. As Kindred, you can slay your own champion with the spell you generate from your 2-star, which is also Kindred's champion spell. So you can actually trigger this yourself to kill your champion and then revive them. So essentially you can make 2 copies of your champion. So pretty interesting, unique synergies here with the Guardian Angel. Gets even more powerful when you can pair this with like a Stalker's Blade. You won't be able to do that for your first rare relic, but still a good pickup, but probably a little bit less impactful than one of the other 2. As far as some common relics, Star Child Staff is actually pretty nice. Game start, heal your Nexus 5. Kindred can struggle in the early game and end up taking good amount of damage. Your games can go pretty long, so having some sustain to help you through those adventures is pretty nice. So Star Child Staff definitely quite helpful. Chameleon's Necklace, as normal, Kindred is your main win condition. Getting more copies of them is very important, so Chameleon's Necklace quite helpful right there. Then last up, Banshee's Veil, just that spell shield, especially if you're going for like a Corrupted Star Fragment build and you really don't want Kindred to die. Protecting her with the spell shield is solid. Probably not the strongest choice because you can normally pick up spell shield throughout your run, or if you just know the encounters and play smart, you don't really need it. But if you find your Kindred is dying and you're struggling a little bit, Banshee's Veil can definitely help you out. Next up then, we have LeBlanc. So for your first rare relic, probably want to go for a Stalker's Blade or a Guardian Orb. So when I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. You can summon a lot of different copies of LeBlanc, so Stalker's Blade, very good there, giving you crazy amounts of removal. Guardian's Orb, when I'm summoned, grant epic items to 3 random cards in your deck. Since you can summon so many copies of LeBlanc, Guardian Orb is going to go off tons of times, just buffing up your entire deck like crazy. So either of these, really the best pickup for your first rare relic. As far as a common relic, you might want to go with really any of the summon effects because you can trigger them many times. So Ravenous Hydra, when I'm summoned, deal 1 to all enemies. True Ice Flail, when I'm summoned, give enemies vulnerable this round. Everfrost, when I'm summoned, stun the strongest enemy. Any of these summon effects, since LeBlanc can trigger them many times, they are greatly increased in value, so any of those would be pretty good to pick up. But as normal, Chameleon's Necklace, game start, create 2 copies of me in your deck. Since LeBlanc is a 3 cost, also your main win condition, being able to play her right away is pretty important. So Chameleon's Necklace is normally what I'd go with just for consistency to make sure you can actually play your LeBlanc hopefully every game. Lee Sin is up next. So for your first rare relic, Troll King's Crown, allies have Overwhelm. Pretty good. Overwhelm on Lee Sin is pretty incredible. It kind of doubles his damage because when he levels, he kicks the enemy into the enemy nexus from this Dragon's Rage, but that also recalls them if it doesn't kill them. So you're essentially hitting the enemy nexus once. If you have Overwhelm, your attack then doesn't fizzle, so then he hits the enemy nexus again. So lets you do like double damage having Overwhelm on Lee Sin. So Troll King's Crown, pretty helpful for that. Chemtech Duplicator, when you play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems, copy it with the same targets. Lee Sin, 5 cost champion, so now you play him turn 5. Next round, you have your Duplicator activated, all your spells going off twice. Or you could go for like the Dreadway Chase Gun, when I'm summoned, create 2 warning shots in hand. With Lee Sin, his level up is just you've played 8 spells. Having some free spells to play, quite helpful right there. As far as some common relics to pair with it, Troll King's Crusher to just give your Lee Sin Overwhelm. Very good if you're not going with Troll King's Crown, because Lee Sin is the most important target to have that Overwhelm. So that's a pretty good pairing. Z-Drive Prototype, start adventures with 2 or more rerolls. Lee Sin really needs to get the right powers in order to succeed. So having some more chances to get those powers, pretty good. And then Star Child Staff, game start, heal your Nexus 5. With Lee Sin, you can often take a good amount of damage. Using the Star Child Staff as a little bit of a crutch to help you through some of those adventures is actually quite helpful. And then last up, Lost Chapter, play, refill your spell mana. Since you are mostly a spells-based deck, being able to have the mana to play your spells is quite important. Leona is up next, so for your first rare relic, Grand General's Counterplan, around start, create a fleeting copy of me in hand. Pretty good. So that is going to give you your Morning Light, 3 cost, give allies 1/1 this round, activate another ally's Daybreak effect. This is very good because it's a card that can activate Daybreak without having to be the first card you play. So you can potentially get 2 Daybreaks going off this same round. So very good card. Getting one of those every single round, quite solid. Blade Rack allies have Challenger, and Troll King's Crown allies have Overwhelm. With Leona, you're really focusing on your entire board, and Leona's focused on supporting her board. So going for one of these two is quite good. I'd say Blade Rack actually would be probably a little bit better for your Leona, just because quite often you can have the enemies stunned, or at least most enemy units. So you only have like one or two that's not, and then you can normally have one of your Overwhelm units be able to challenge them and do your full damage on the enemy nexus. But both of these are quite good for just supporting your entire board, and the Grand Jean's Counterplan also solid. Any of these would be a good pickup for your first rare relic. For some relics to be able to go with, or some common relics to pair with your rare relics, going for Overwhelm for your Leona, especially if you're going for like the Blade Rack. Not bad to make Leona be the champion that you can go through and grab whatever unit isn't stunned, have them be blocked by Leona so your other units can attack freely. So Overwhelm, not terrible. Star Child Staff, pretty good. For Leona, you really don't want any of your units to die. You want them to be able to keep scaling up throughout the course of the game. So making sure you have the ability to maybe not take a block that'd be bad, take a hit, and then just heal up at the end of the round. Star Child Staff is quite good for that. Chameleon's Necklace, always solid. A little bit less so for Leona since she's a 5 cost. You can normally draw her in time. Or going for something like Storm Razor, that quick attack, so you have the quick attack Challenger combo. Also pretty good as far as common relics to pair with your rare relics. Next up then, we have Lillia. So for your first rare relic, very similar to Leblanc, probably want to go with a Stalker's Blade or Guardian's Orb. With Lillia, you can resummon her many different times. So Stalker's Blade, every time you summon her, striking the weakest enemy, giving you some pretty good removal. Or the Guardian's Orb, when I'm summoned, grant epic items to 3 random cards in your deck. Being able to trigger this multiple times and just using this to scale up your whole deck. Very good. Either of these would be a great addition for your first rare relic. As far as some common relics to pair with it, you really want to be going for the summon effects. So unless you're going for Chameleon's Necklace to get more copies of the champion, you probably want to go for something like Everfrost. When I'm summoned, stun the strongest enemy. Very good, because since you can summon Lillia many times, being able to stun the enemy unit and then trigger like a Stalker's Blade, so you're stunning the strongest enemy and potentially killing the weakest enemy. Very good. Everfrost is probably the best common relic to pair with Lillia, but if you want to have some fun, and depending on who you're going against, Ravenous Hydra can also be fun. When I'm summoned, deal 1 to all enemies. Just try to nuke the enemy board, potentially. Really, though, I would go for either Everfrost or Chameleon's Necklace to make sure you can actually play your Lillia. Next up, then, we have Lux. So for your first rare relic, going for Arcane Comment, round start, create a fleeting falling comment in hand, 6 cost spell, gives you some good removal. And then obviously playing a 6 cost spell, really good for Lux, because that is kind of what her whole kit is based around. Or going for Archangel Staff, round start, refill your spell mana, just so you have the freedom to play all of your different spells. Or Chemtech Duplicator, when you do play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems, copy with the same targets. Since Lux is a 5 cost, you play her for a 5 cost. The next round, your Chemtech Duplicator will be active. Really, any of these would be a great rare relic for your first rare relic slot. I would probably go for Chemtech Duplicator or Arcane Comment. Sometimes you could have a problem with Archangel Staff where you have the mana, but you don't have any spells to play. So that could be a little bit of a downside for you. As far as common relics to pair it with, Lost Chapter, play, refill your spell mana. Always good just to make sure you can actually play a lot of these bigger spells. Also, the Z Drive prototype start eventually with 2 or more rerolls, or 2 rerolls. Also very good for Lux. There is 2 powers that she really wants to look for. Sorcery, so you refill your mana at round start, but also Slow but Steady, so all of your slow spells are doubled. Those are like the 2 most impactful powers for Lux. So being able to try to get those with your Z-Drive prototype is pretty good. Reroll's definitely another great addition. Next up then, we have Lux Illuminated. So for your first rare relic, Crown Guard Inheritance, when I level up Rally, pretty good. You can normally level up while you are attacking. So you attack, you use up 1 attack token, and with a level up Rally, you can then attack again right after. Very powerful combo. You can normally use that to end the game. So Crown Guard, great to pair with it. Troll King's Crown allies have Overwhelm. Now, if you have Lux at 4 stars, you get this by default. But since this is a video more focused on the early game, I'm not really expecting you to have her at 4 stars. So if you don't have that, the Overwhelm, very handy. And then last up, Green Glade Shadeleaf support. Grant my supported ally elusive. With Lux, you're already trying to focus on supporting units, so having some further synergy with that is pretty good. As far as some common relics to go with, Chameleon's Necklace, game start, create 2 copies of me in your deck. Really nice. Lux is very important to your overall playstyle, and since she is a 3 cost, you do want to be playing her pretty early. Making sure you have more copies of her so you can actually play her in the early game is very good. Lost Chapter, play, refill your spell mana. With Lux, spells are a big part of your kit, so making sure you have mana to play spells, also very important. And then one last relic, Dreams of Yordle, Spirit and Impact. Lux is all about boosting and having the Spirit and Impact stats, and also her level up has to deal with the amount of keywords you have. So getting pretty much an extra stack of Spirit and Impact is pretty good. I would still go for the Chameleon's Necklace over it, but another common relic you might want to consider using. Next up then, we have Master Yi. So for Master Yi, your first rare relic, the Grand Challenge counter plan, round start, create a fleeting copy of me in hand. That is able to give you your champion spell, very good combat trick, which then also gives you another spell to play. So making sure you can play that every round, quite handy. Archangel Staff, round start, refill your spell mana. Since you're all about playing spells, being able to have that happen throughout the pretty much whole course of the game, since he's a 2 cost, pretty good. And then last up, Troll King's Crown, allies have Overwhelm. Making sure you can use all of your stats and scaling to actually end the game fairly quickly. Again, pretty good rare relic to pick up for your first one. As far as the best common relics to go with, especially to pair with your first rare relic, Lost Chapter, play, refill your spell mana. Obviously, very good to be able to play spells as soon as you play Master Yi. But again, most importantly, the Chameleon's Necklace, game start, create 2 copies of me in your deck. Since Master Yi is a 2 cost, you want to be playing him in the very first round. So making sure you can actually have him in your opening hand, very important. But his champion spell is also incredibly important. So having some more copies of him just for the champion spell alone, also very good. Chameleon Necklace, really the best choice in my opinion for Master Yi. Next up then, we have Misfortune. So for your first rare relic, Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my support ally, grant me its keywords and stats. Misfortune is pretty fragile. You really need something in order to buffer up and to be able to safely attack. So Corrupted Star Fragment, using this on some of your units. With Misfortune, you have a lot of fodder units, so you're totally fine with them dying. So you have plenty of targets to be able to use this Corrupted Star Fragment on, even your ephemerals you make every round or every other round. Very good right there. But with Misfortune, you also really wanting to support your entire board, because you normally are going to have at least close to a full board. So making sure all units have Challenger to get the best attack possible, that can be really good. And that's another way you can try to save your Misfortune by making sure the enemy units are blocking your units other than Misfortune through the Challenger. That can be very helpful. Or the Troll King's Crown just to push some more damage. All of these would be pretty good for your first rare relic. I would think Corrupted Star Fragment or Blade Rack would actually probably be a little bit better than the Troll King's Crown though. As far as some common relics to go with, you could go for some to try to give Misfortune a little bit of safety, especially with her attack. So either going for like a Storm Razor for that quick attack, or maybe a Rage Blade just so she can scale up a little bit faster, or even going for like a Spell Shield. Any of those kind of fulfill the same role of trying to protect your Misfortune or letting her attack safely. But again, it's kind of the best common relic. The Chameleon's Necklace, making 2 more copies, so you just have more Misfortunes in your deck, so you can try to draw her. Since she's a 3 cost, you want to be playing her pretty early, so having more copies of her in your deck definitely helps with that. Next up then, we have Mordekaiser. So for Mordekaiser, I think the 2 best rare relics for you to use right away, Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my support ally, grant me its keywords and stats. Very good for Mordekaiser because he'll not only get all of the benefits from it, but Mordekaiser has a very strong effect of when you slay another ally, revive it. So even though you're killing a unit with Corrupted Star Fragment, you're immediately reviving them because just Mordekaiser's on the board. So incredibly good, kind of one of the best champions to use this relic on. But then you also have Wicked Harvest, play, deal 3 to all other units. This is very good because if you kill any of your own units with this when you play your Mordekaiser, he's going to immediately revive it. And you're all about being able to revive your own units. Your level up is 15 or more allies have died. So being able to potentially kill your entire board, revive them, help when you trigger your level up, very good. And then also you're going to be dealing 3 damage to the enemy board, so potentially killing them. One of these 2 is, I think, the best rare relic for you to use for your first rare relic slot. As far as common relics, Star Child Staff, game start, heal your Nexus 5. With Mordekaiser, while you do have some sustain, it's going to be a long time. The game's going to go on a long time before that really can kick in. So this is kind of just helping you make sure you can get through all of those matches, healing you up. And this just means if you take any damage during your run, it's not as terrible for you because you know you're going to heal up 5 at the end of every round, which especially in the early levels, 5 is quite a lot. Like you start off with like 20 health, so healing up a quarter of that every single battle is pretty good. As far as some other common relics to use, Ravenous Hydra, again, fun. When summon, deal 1 to all enemies, so just trying to kill the enemy board, kind of doubling down with the Wicked Harvest, then you're dealing 4 damage to all of the enemies, so that can be pretty fun. And as always, Chameleon's Necklace, still a solid pickup. Since he's a 7 cost, you normally should be able to draw him by the time you need him, but just making sure you can actually play your Mordekaiser is always a benefit. Really, though, I think I'd go for Starchild Staff as kind of the best common relic, just to make sure you can get through those adventures. Next up, then, we have Morgana. So for your first rare relic slot, Archangel Staff, round start, refill your spell mana. You are a spells-based deck. Or the Grand General's Counterplan, round start, create a fleeting copy of me in hand. Again, can work as a bit of a safety measure, so in case your Morgana dies, you then have a fleeting copy to play, but normally you just want to be using the Dark Binding so you can consistently stun an enemy and curse it with shackles. I would probably use the Grand General's Counterplan first for the rare relic slot, and then potentially later on pair it with the Archangel Staff, but for the first one, I would go for the Grand General's Counterplan first. As far as relics, common relics to pair with it, I would really go for the Chameleon's Necklace. Morgana is very important to your kit. Also, you love getting more copies of her champion spell, so Chameleon's Necklace definitely pairs very, very well, but you could always go for the Lost Chapter to refill your spell mana, so you can play Morgana and immediately try to play a spell. Nami is up next, so for your first rare relic, Chemtech Duplicator, when you play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems, copy it with the same targets. Now, as your Nami gets higher and higher level, you're probably going to want to take this off because you can normally end games before this activates, but especially when you are lower level, this can be very helpful. Next, though, the Grand General's Counterplan, round start, create a fleeting copy of me in hand. Nami's champion spell is very good because it essentially is 3 different spells you can then play. So giving you really 3 spells to play every round, very helpful. And then Dreadweight Chase Cunt, when summon, create 2 warning shots in hand. Very nice, just have 2 free spells to play. While this can be helpful, I would really go for either the Duplicator or the Counterplan as my top picks for the first rare relic you want to be using. As far as common relics, I'm first going to say one you don't want, and that is Lost Chapter. So you think that this would be really good, but normally all it's going to be doing is giving you 1 spell mana. With Nami, you always have pretty much 1 spell mana already because every time you play a spell, you refill 1 spell mana. So as soon as you play a single spell, you always are sitting at least 1 spell mana. And then if you would play Nami, she is attuned, so she's immediately going to give you another spell mana, so you'll be sitting at 2 spell mana. So if you play Lost Chapter, all you're really getting is 1 singular spell mana instead of the normal 3. So while Lost Chapter seems like it could be good, when you actually use it on Nami, you realize it's actually terrible. So don't use Lost Chapter for Nami. This one won't be surprising to anyone that's been watching the video so far, but Chameleon's Necklace, game start, create 2 copies of me in your deck. Again, absolutely fantastic for Nami. For one, cheap champion that you want to get on the board right away. She is your main powerhouse. You want her on the board. So not only is she cheap, you really need to play her right away. Also, her champion spell is fantastic, so getting more copies of Nami feels great. Really the best common relic for you to use. Nasus is up next, so for your first rare relic, Stalker's Blade, or also Gatebreaker to strike the Nexus, but I would go for Stalker's Blade. When I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. This would be my top go-to pick. With Nasus, you're all about killing enemy units, and his level up is I've struck for 10 or more damage in 1 strike. So being able to play Nasus and potentially level him up immediately is very good. If you don't want to go for the Stalker's Blade, some other alternatives though. Grand General's Counterplan, round start, create a fleeting copy of me in your hand. That is going to be giving you a Siphoning Strike, which an ally strikes a unit. If it dies, grant allied champions everywhere 2/2. Really fun way to scale up your Nasus and other champions. Or Blade Rack, Allies of Challenger, just making sure your full board is getting the best trades possible. Still though, I would go for Stalker's Blade as my top pick for your first rare relic. As far as common relics to pair with your rare relic, Starchild Staff, game start, heal your Nexus 5. Nasus can be pretty slow and have a rough time in adventures. So being able to have that extra healing is very helpful and good pickup for you. But if you don't want to go for that, you want to go for something maybe a little bit more aggressive, you can either either go for the Overwhelm, because Nasus doesn't get that naturally, and having this big giant unit, you would like to be able to have Overwhelm in order to hit the enemy nexus, or you go for the Rage Blade just to further double down on scaling up your Nasus. Still think that the Star Child Staff is probably the best pickup though. Up next then, we have Neeko. So for your first rare relic, Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my supported ally, grant me its keywords and stats. Neeko is a 2 cost with pretty average stat line, so being able to have her on the board and just make her bigger and bigger with the Corrupted Star Fragment is pretty good. You can really make your Neeko just your main win condition and really use her to destroy the enemy. So Corrupted Star Fragment, pretty good. Guardian's Orb, also solid. When I'm summoned, grant epic items to 3 random cards in your deck. With Neeko, she has her champion spell of Shape Splitter. Summon an exact ephemeral copy of an ally, then swap them. With that, you can trigger summoning Neeko many times, and so the Guardian's Orb can really help just scale up your whole board. As far as common relics to pair with this, Chameleon's Necklace, very important. Again, 2 cost champion, so you really want to be able to gain her on the board round 1. Also, you really want her champion spell, so going for the Chameleon's Necklace, I mean, she is the chameleon, is very helpful. But if you don't want to deal with that, Everfrost, especially if you're going for the Guardian Orb build, that can be pretty good, because now when you're summoning them, they're stunning the strongest enemy and granting your units these epic items. Or you could also go for the Lost Chapter, play refill your spell mana. That way you can try to play your champion, have enough mana to play the Shape Splitter, and just be triggering your Guardian's Orb twice in the very first round. So another build you could potentially go with. Next up then, we have Nidalee. So for Nidalee, for your first rare relic, you can go for the Transmogulator, support, transform my supported ally into a random follower that costs 3 more. So they have actually made this work with Nidalee. Didn't work when it first came out, but it does work for your level up. I've seen you summon or transform for other allies. So triggers your star powers as well as your level up condition. So pretty solid right there. Or you can go for the Crown Guard Inheritance, my level up rally. Nidalee is another champion that you can level up multiple times throughout a single match, so you can have this go off many different times. Or you can go for the Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my supported ally, grant me its keywords and stats, to again just further focus on your Nidalee being a powerhouse and using her to destroy the enemy nexus. For me, I would go with Crown Guard Inheritance, I think, first, and then Transmogulator, and then last for me would be Corrupted Star Fragment. But I know some people really like the Corrupted Star Fragment build for her. As far as common relics, the best one for Nidalee by far is the Lost Chapter, play, refill your spell mana. And that's because with this, you can play Nidalee round 1. So Nidalee has this ambush mechanic. So instead of playing Nidalee for 4 mana, what you can do is you can play her for 2 mana so that she'll be disguised as the bush. She then creates this spell in hand, so 2 cost spell, burst speed, transform your Nidalee from the bush into Nidalee. So you're still paying 4 mana, but now 2 of that mana is spell mana. So when Nidalee is transformed as the bush, she still will trigger your Lost Chapter. So you play her for 2 mana as the bush, she triggers Lost Chapter, refilling your spell mana, you then play that spell, and you summon Nidalee round 1. So Lost Chapter, because of that specific interaction, is really the best common relic for Nidalee. All right, next up we have Nilah. So for Nilah, for your first rare relic, Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my supported ally, grant me its keywords and stats. Again, pretty solid. Nilah being a 2 cost champion, you want to get her on the board immediately, and then you can just be using this to buff her up, make her your main win condition, and just use her to end the game. So pretty solid right there. But you can go for the Gravedigger Spade, round start, draw 1, give it fleeting. Nilah, you're all about having fleeting cards, so having a way to generate that consistently is pretty good. Or you can go for the Loose Cannon's Payload. When summoned, discard your hand, then create that many Pow Pows in hand. Now this is specifically good because of her new second star power. So her second star power, when you discard a card, create a copy of it in your deck, and draw 1 fleeting at next round start. So even though you're discarding cards, it doesn't really matter because it's going to be shuffled back into your deck. So even though this relic is discarding all of your cards, you're not losing them, they're going back into your deck, and then you're going to be drawing fleeting cards for the cards you discarded. So it's kind of another way to get more fleeting card generation. You are getting a bunch of these Pow Pows as well, which doesn't matter quite as much. It can help you control the board, but it's more the fact you're discarding your hand, and then you're going to start drawing a bunch of fleeting cards. So any of these would work out pretty well for your first rare relic slot. As far as some common relics to pair with it, so Rage Blade, attack, grant me 1/1. since she can be on the board immediately, being able to get a lot of attacks in and help the scaling, very good, especially if you're going for like Corrupted Star Fragment to again further emphasize your attacks and scaling. But really the best is just going to be the Chameleon's Necklace. Game start, create 2 copies of me in your deck. Since you're a 2-cost champion, you want to play her round 1. You need more copies of her in your deck to do that. So that's why Chameleon's Necklace is so helpful. Next up then, we have Norra. So Norra, for your first rare relic you want to be using, there's the Transmogulator. So support, transform my supported ally into a random follower that costs 3 more. For Norra, this is going to count towards your star powers of a created unit. So it's going to be a very strong unit because not only is it getting recycled into one that's 3 higher in cost, but it's also going to get extra stats from your star powers. And this also counts towards your level up if you summon created allies. So all around works pretty well for you. Or you can go for the Corrupted Star Fragment support, kill my supported ally, grant me its keywords and stats. Since Norra is a 2-cost and a elusive, making her a giant unit is very good. You can get her on the board round 1, be able to get those attacks and then keep scaling her up. So either of these work out pretty well for your Norra. As far as common relics to pair it with, no one's going to be surprised if they're watching so far. Chameleon's Necklace, game start, create 2 copies of me in your deck. For Norra being a 2-cost champion, you really want her on the board round 1. So making sure you have some more copies of her, because it's not until level 20 you get that guaranteed champion draw. So having these extra copies, very helpful. Definitely recommend using this one. Ornn is up next. So for your first rare relic, Corrupted Star Fragment, again, very good. Support, kill my supported ally, grant me its keywords and stats. This one works a little bit better for Ornn because once he levels, then attack, forge me twice, then summon a attacking Spirit of the Ram with my stats. So that's this ephemeral unit right here. It has that overwhelm, and then it's just going to have whatever Ornn's stats are. So essentially by using Corrupted Star Fragment on the Ram, you're giving overwhelm, and then you're just doubling Ornn's stats. So while we do recommend this for a lot of people, it is especially good on Ornn. Now you could go for like a Stalker's Blade. When I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. That way you can try to immediately level up your Ornn. An ally has struck for 8 or more damage in a single strike. This is a way that when you play Ornn, he takes an equipment that's hopefully got a lot of stats on it. He's able to strike and immediately level because, again, once he's leveled, then you're able to summon that attacking ram. So Stalker's Blade, again, still solid. Or you can go for Troll King's Crown, Allies of Overwhelm, just to make sure you can use your large amount of stats to be able to destroy the enemy nexus. But these are kind of listed in order of importance. So I would go for Corrupted Star Fragment first, and then maybe go for Stalker's Blade if you don't have that. And then maybe if you don't have the other two, go for the Troll King's Crown. As far as common relics to go with, Starchild Staff will definitely help you heal your Nexus 5. Ornn can be pretty slow. The longer the match goes on, the more likely you are able to take some chip damage from the enemy. So just having a little bit of sustain, very helpful. Starchild Staff, definitely nice, especially in that early game to help you clear those early adventures. All right, next up we have Pyke. Also note that I'm doing this right before Pyke is about to get a constellation. So right here, he has his 3 stars. I don't think him getting a constellation should change what you want to get for his relics, but just in case something does radically change with Pyke, do bear in mind this is right before he does get the full 6-star constellation. But for your first rare relic, some options. One, just going for a flat stat stick as far as a relic. Honestly, not that bad. Or you can go for a Stalker's Blade. When I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. This would be my go-to pick and the one I would do first because his level up allied Pykes have dealt 15 or more damage. Being able to immediately drop him on the board, get a strike off, do some damage, and eventually, hopefully when he's leveled, when I kill an enemy, I strike the weakest enemy. So then you can play your Pyke, get a strike off, and hopefully just start chaining through and wipe the entire enemy board. So Stalker's Blade, normally what I would go with, but we also have Wicked Harvest, play, deal 3 to all other units. This one is a little bit interesting. For one, this is going to do a lot of damage, so it's going to help you level up your Pyke very quickly, but it is also going to nuke your own board, and normally for Pyke, you want to try to keep your units alive if possible. So a little bit sad, hurting your own units, but will level your Pyke very quickly. For me though, I would go for Stalker's Blade as my first rare relic. As far as some common relics to pair it with, Challenger's not bad. Pyke does have quick attack, so going for the quick attack Challenger combo is pretty solid. Chameleon's Necklace, game start, create 2 copies of me in your deck. Now, while he is a 5 cost, Pyke does have the effect of when I lurk, so when he's the top card when you're attacking, he is then able to transform into Death from below. So you see that over here, still a 5 cost, but this is a spell. Summon Pyke striking an enemy. So very nice. So having some more copies of Pike in your deck to be able to trigger that lurk effect, very good. So that's why Chameleon's Necklace is a little bit better than you might think, even though he's a 5-cost champion. Or you could also go for like a Ravenous Hydra, when him summon, deal 1 to all enemies, again to just try to level up your Pike a little bit faster. And then if this kills any units, being able to then start the scaling and killing the entire enemy board potentially. Next up then we have Samira. So for your first rare relic, when I level up Rally from Crown Guard Inheritance, this is very nice because with Samira, you can normally level her up fairly consistently early on in the game, and she can already generate rallies, but that's after she's leveled. So here you're able to trigger the rally when she levels and then get potentially more rallies later on. This will really help you just be very aggressive, try to rush the enemy down. Very good setup for your Samira, and it also combos very well with some other rare relics you can kind of build with later. Also Troll King's Crown, Allies of Overwhelm, very nice and solid for just trying to put a lot of pressure on the enemy at the very start of the game. Also, since Samira is a 2-cost, often going to be the first card you're playing, making sure that this is just active like the whole game, very beneficial. As far as common relics, it's going to be pretty simple and straightforward. Chameleon's Necklace, getting more copies of them in your deck, very good. 2-cost champion, you want to be playing them, especially at the very start of the game. Increasing your odds of doing that, very handy. If you don't want to go for this though, the Grand Duelist Blade for that challenger, not bad to get that quick attack challenger combo. Again, pretty solid. Or even going for the Rage Blade, get some more scaling with your Samira, or even Lost Chapter to be able to play a lot of your spells when you play your Samira. Still though, out of everything, I would go for that Chameleon's Necklace above any of the other common relics. Next up then we have Set. So for your first rare relic, we have the Chemtech Duplicator. When you play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems, copy with the same targets. Now, Set's 5 costs, so play him very next round. This is activated. Very, very good for you, especially because you're all based around the the coin mechanic. So coin stack, refill 1 mana. When this goes off and then gets doubled, it's doubling the amount of mana refilled. So it's a very powerful relic for you and probably the best one to choose. These other two can pair very well with it or be a little bit more standalone. Archangel Staff, round start, refill your spell mana. Great, you do want to be playing a lot of spells, so making sure you have the mana to do that is quite handy. Or the Grand General's Counterplan, round start, create a fleeting copy of me in your hand. This is very good, gives you a lot of control with stunning 2 enemies, gives you a coin, and together these are all very strong, and you can use them individually. I would probably go for either Chemtech Duplicator or Grand General's Counterplan as my first rare relic though. Now for some common relics, going for the Stormrazor, so you have the quick attack challenger combo, always good. Lost Chapter, pretty solid because you want to be playing as much mana as you can every round, so being able to play him, get some mana refilled, not bad, especially if you're not going to have the Archangel Staff. But also going for some of the more passive ones like the Starchild Staff, just game start, heal your Nexus 5, or even the extra rerolls. Both of these would be pretty solid for you as well. All right, next up we have Swain. So for your first rare relic, some interesting option here, the Curator's Gatebreaker. -1 power, play I strike the enemy Nexus. This is specifically good for your Nexus Strike effect, deal 3 to the enemy Nexus. So you're only going to be hitting the Nexus for 2 damage because of the -1 power, but then you're also going to do that 3 damage. Really good, especially for trying to ramp up your star powers by making the enemy Nexus a little bit lower. Great for contributing towards your level up. All around Gatebreaker, pretty solid and just simple option for you to use. Chase Guns, when I'm summoned, create 2 warning shots in hand. Now this, burst speed, deal 1 to the enemy Nexus. Good for getting the enemy Nexus a little bit lower. And also what you can do is, since you're playing Swain at 5 cost, the enemy Nexus should have already taken some damage. Being able to play this should be able to scale from your star powers to actually hit the enemy Nexus for more damage. So you actually don't have to play this in the first round, but you can use these to kind of nuke the enemy Nexus. So that's pretty good. And then Riptide Battery, plunder, play Cannon Barrage a number of times equal to my cost. So this is a great way to do a lot of out of combat damage and end up doing a lot of damage to the enemy Nexus. These also can scale from your star powers as well. Very solid. Again, this does have that plunder effect though. All of these though, very good. Just choose whatever fits your personal playstyle, but all very solid for your Swain. As far as some common relics to be able to pair with, Ravenous Hydra, not bad to just deal some more out of combat damage, can be pretty fun for you. Lost Chapter, you do have a lot of spells, so being able to play Swain and immediately play some more spells would be pretty good. And then Everfrost actually wouldn't be bad. You do have some decent synergy with Everfrost, or with stuns in general, so being able to play him and immediately stun the strongest enemy, also not too bad. And then last up, we do have the Chameleon's Necklace once again. With Swain, he is a 5 cost, so you're not going to play him as early, but his champion spell is fantastic. Being able to have more copies of this is very important, and then just being able to make sure you can play your Swain at the 5 mana, also very good. So definitely less valuable than on most other champions, just because Swain is such a high cost, but still, there is a place for it here on Swain. Next up then, we have Tahm Kench. So for your first rare relic, the Berserker's Buckle, when I survive damage, grant me 2/2. So essentially just doubling your star powers. Very simple and fun to use. Probably be my selection for your first rare relic, but some other ones that also work out pretty well. So the Troll King's Crown, allies have Overwhelm. Very solid. You are a scaling deck, so making sure you can actually leverage your high amounts of stats that you're going to end up getting and not just getting blocked out. Pretty good. And then Archangel Staff, round start, refill your spell mana. Tahm Kench does make these acquired tastes every round, so 2 cost slow spell. So making sure you always have the mana to use that, also pretty good. I think I would personally go for the Berserker's Buckle for my top one, but all of these quite solid. As far as some common relics, going for like the Armadillo Shell, the +1 health and tough, also really good. Can reduce down a lot of damage you're taking and just further scale up your Tahm Kench. So that's pretty good. Or you can go for the regen so that at the end of the round, Tahm Kench will just heal back to full, which normally he'll have a lot higher stats because he's scaled up from any damage. So both these can be pretty good for you. Challenger also actually pretty good. Quite often with Tahm Kench, the enemy isn't going to want to block you if they can avoid it because they know they're just going to scale you up. So actually forcing the enemy to block you with the Challenger, making sure you're also getting the best trade possible, also pretty good for you. Moving on then, we have Talia. So Talia, for your first rare relic slot, we do have the Crown Guard Inheritance by level up Rally. Normally, Talia can kind of just sit in your hand and wait to play her as a rally with this. So pretty good just to be able to combo down and end the game with her. Or you can go for a Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my support ally, grant me its stats and keywords. Very good for trying to turn Talia into your win condition, just dumping a bunch of stats on her, using her to annihilate the enemy nexus. And then we have Troll King's Crown. This is specifically if you don't have Talia at 3 stars. Again, we're trying to make this a video so that people with lower levels and lower star powers are able to benefit from it. So at Talia, at her 3rd star power, all of your units have Overwhelm already. So obviously, if you have her at 3 stars, you don't need this. But if you don't have her at 3 stars, the Overwhelm is very helpful, so you might just want to use Troll King's Crown. As far as some common relics, the Z-Drive prototype, extra rerolls just to make sure you get the right powers to pair with your playstyle can be pretty good. Or going for like the Star Child Staff, game start, heal your Nexus 5. Quite often you might be taking a couple hits throughout the course of a match, so making sure you can heal those up at the end of the round is quite helpful. Next up then, we have Teemo. So for your first rare relic, just throwing on a stat stick for Teemo. Not bad, he's a very weak champion, so just making him a little bit harder to kill isn't terrible. Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my supported ally, grant me its keywords and stats. Again, very nice for just trying to buff up your Teemo. You do have to actually be able to attack, so sometimes you'll play Teemo and they'll just immediately kill him, but as long as you get a attack in, you can be all right. So Corrupted Star Fragment, pretty nice right there. And then the Green Glade Shadeleaf, support, grant my supported ally elusive, so you can slowly just give all of your units elusive because you have Teemo on the board right away. He's already elusive, and then every time you attack, you're just giving more and more of your units that elusive. So another fun way to go with that. As far as some common relics to pair with your first rare relic, Chameleon's Necklace, getting more copies of Teemo, very important. He's a cheap champion. Also, he's a champion that's very likely to die, so making sure you have more copies of him to play, very good. Also with Teemo, you're normally going to be taking a decent amount of damage. So Star Child Staff, being able to heal up your Nexus so you can actually survive throughout the course of a whole adventure, very helpful as well. If you don't want to use either of those though, you could go for Dreams of Yordles to again give your Teemo a little bit of extra stats and damage with that impact. or Rage Blade to again try to scale up your Teemo so that he can actually end up being a little bit more formidable and less likely to die. Next up then, we have the Poro King. So we have Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my support ally, grant me its keywords and stats. Good to again try to transform your Poro King into your win condition. Try to clear out your board because sometimes you're going to have too many Poros on your board. But also, great way to trigger your star powers that benefit from killing your own units or your own units dying at least. So does a lot for you. And then we have Blade Rack and Troll King's Crown, just giving your unit some keywords. Both of them very helpful keywords, but also for Poro King, your star powers rely on you having a certain amount of keywords. So just trying to help having more keywords to trigger your star powers to get your board-wide scaling going. Both of these are pretty good. All that being said though, Poro King is actually a champion that you can go much more passive with. So if you wanted to focus on a more passive build where you don't really rely on playing your Poro King, you go for something like the Cardmaster's Gambit, 1/1, and when you win an encounter without taking any Nexus damage, earn 1 reroll. So a way to try to passively get more rerolls. But this will come down to if you can consistently clear without taking damage. You could always just go for like the Starchild Staff or Z-Drive Prototype, get some more rerolls, try to get the right upgrades, as well as having a good amount of sustain every single match. So similar to Darius, you could actually get rid of any rare relics and just use a much more passive setup and actually do very well with that. So both of these can work as standalone relics or using them as a relic with a rare relic. But if you do want to actually focus on your Poro King a bit more, then you could go for like Dreams of Yordles. That way you get 2 keywords that aren't generated that often to try to trigger your star powers. And you could also use a Lost Chapter, play, refill your spell mana. That way you have mana to play the different Poro snacks you're also going to be generating. Next up then, we have Thresh. So for your first rare relic, we have Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my supported ally, grant me its keywords and stats. This one is absolutely fantastic for your Thresh. You're all about being able to kill your own units and then just making your Thresh an absolute monster with this. Very fun, also fits thematically quite well. Also, we have Succubus Brand, 1/1, and when I kill a unit, summon a random husk. So that is also going to be able to be another unit that gets killed when you play a separate unit. So it can further just work well with your star powers and your whole playstyle of killing your own units. Or Wicked Harvest, play, deal 3 to all other units, so your units and the enemies. This has a high likelihood of leveling you up or at least getting you close. So again, pretty solid. I think I would go for Corrupted Star Fragments first, but if you don't have that, either of these would also be fairly good for you. As far as some common relics, Ravenous Hydra, not bad when I'm summoned, deal 1 to all other enemies, especially if you're going in an adventure where you think this will actually get kills, because that can, again, just try to help you level up. Or you could always go for the Storm Razor, so you have that quick attack challenger combo, which is very powerful. And then last up, Chameleon's Necklace, as always, a great option to throw on. Not as needed as many other champions, but still quite nice to have for your Thresh. Next up then, we have Varus. So for your first rare relics, we have Hymn of Valor. When I'm summoned, create a redoubled Valor in hand. It costs 3. So fully heal an ally, then double its power and health. Can be pretty good for your Varus, especially since from your star powers, you can have this go off twice. So making one unit absolutely massive. Also for Varus, it works out a little bit better because of his bow. So when you play a spell or equip an ally, give me 1 power, max 5, and then this can get upgraded when you level up, so it now can go up to plus 10. So essentially you get a lot of extra power that can then get duplicated from the redoubled Valor. So you can actually end up making your Varus absolutely massive. Very fun to play with. But you could also go for Archangel Staff to always have your mana be refilled, or Chemtech Duplicator with Varus, 4 costs, 6 costs isn't too far away, so being able to get all of your spells doubled yet again, not too bad. For kind of the go-to build though, going for the Hymn of Valor, and then the Lost Chapter, this is going to be one of the most powerful combos you can do with a rare and common relic. You play him, he refills your mana, so you can then immediately play your redoubled Valor if you want, or save it till you have a little bit more stats. But this is going to be a incredibly powerful combination and a great way to close out a lot of the adventures. So highly recommend going with this. Vayne is up next. So taking a look at some rare relics you might want to use for your first rare relic slot. Archangel Staff, round start, refill your spell mana. This is especially good for Vayne because when I'm summoned to round start, create a tumble in hand. If you have one, reduces cost by 1. So that tumble, equip an ally with an equipment in hand that costs 2 or less, and then it starts a free attack. This is very powerful, especially because with Vayne, your equipment has Scout on it. A free attack with Scout essentially triggers a rally. So being able to have as much mana as you can in order to play those tumbles every round that you're able to generate, pretty good to use. You can also go for like Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my support ally, grant me its keywords and stats. Again, just trying to improve your Vayne, make her a little bit more powerful. Or the Berserker's Buckle, when I survive damage, grant me 2/2. With Vayne, you want her to scale up. She doesn't have the best stat line, especially as the game goes on. So just any way to try to boost her up in power is pretty solid. As far as some different common relics, so you can go for something like Chameleon's Necklace to get more copies of Vayne, try to play her at a 3 cost. And while that is still helpful, quite often you might actually want to be using a different common relic to help you out more. So going for like a Stormrazor or Challenger, one of these. Vayne doesn't have any keywords by default, so giving her something to try to help her, whether it is the quick attack so she can take hits without taking damage back, or like the Challenger so she can actually make sure she's making the best attack possible or best trade possible, or even going for like a Rage Blade to again be able to attack as many times as you can and keep scaling her up. Or you could always go for a Lost Chapter, which while it's still good, it's a little bit worse since Tumble has been increased to a 4 cost. Refilling your mana, if you're playing Vayne right for 3, and that's taking all of your normal mana, even if you refill all your spell mana, you still can't play that Tumble. So Lost Chapter is still decent, but definitely not quite as good as it used to be. Next up then, we have Veigar. So for your different rare relics, up first, Chemtech Duplicator. When you play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems copied with the same targets, this is absolutely fantastic for you. It's very helpful for being able to close out the game as soon as you hit that 6 mana. So very good. Could always go for Archangel Staff, round start to refill your spell mana. This is specifically good if you don't have your Veigar at 3 mana or 3 stars. When you're at 3 stars, your darkness, the one you're generating every round, is then 0. You really don't need the extra mana that much then. But if you don't have him at that point, this is then going to help you out. Or the Scourge of Stash, Plunder, I cost 2 less. Getting Veigar on the board a little bit earlier can be very helpful. He not only generates a darkness for you, but then round start, grant your darkness everywhere 1 extra damage. So just having him on the board is constantly ramping up your darkness. Very good. I think I would, in order of priority, go for Chemtech Duplicator, Scourge of Stash, and then Archangel Staff is really only if you have your Veigar at 1 or 2 stars. As far as common relics, Star Child Staff, Game Start Heal your Nexus 5. Very good. Veigar can be a little bit slow when you first start playing him, so making sure you have that little bit of extra sustain, quite helpful. Chameleon's Necklace, again, good for your Veigar. You really want to have him on the board. He is the way that you're winning, because once he's leveled, that's when you can then nuke the enemy Nexus with your darkness. So you really need your Veigar to be on the board often in order to win. So making sure you have extra copies of him, very good for that. Also just going for a spell shield to protect your Veigar. Not as good as some of the other options, but if you're just starting out and you notice your Veigar just keeps dying, this can definitely help you as you learn the champion a little bit more, just to keep him protected. If you're a little bit more experienced, you can normally play without this, but definitely can help you out early. Next up then, we have Vex. So for Vex, for some different rare relics you might want to choose, Chemtech Duplicator, when you play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems, copy with the same targets. Very good, especially since you are very much a spells-based deck. Loose Cannon's Payload, when I'm summoned, discard your hand, then create that many Pow Pows in hand. So those Pow Pows, 2 cost burst, deal 3 to a unit, can be pretty good for trying to get that gloom generation from your spells. It is a little bit less important these days since they have improved Vex's starting deck a little bit, but still nice to be able to guarantee have some removal spells you can play towards the enemy to get that gloom going. And then we also have Utmost Despair, play grant enemies gloom, just to gloom the entire enemy board. Pretty simple and straightforward. Often this will be able to level up your Vex. As far as some common relics to pair with it, going for a Z-Drive prototype for some extra rerolls, make sure you get the right powers. Pretty good, nice to have. Also Star Child Staff, again, just to try to get a little bit of extra healing, because Vex definitely can use the extra support right now. But then also the Chameleon's Necklace. I know we talk about it a lot, but for Vex, again, she's a little bit of extra power with it. For one, you want to be sure you have your Vex on the board, because your Vex, when she levels, when enemy gains gloom, it gains it again. This just doubles all of your gloom output. And if you have Vex at 2 stars, then the damage from your spells and skills deals damage in the form of gloom. If Vex is on the board and leveled, she essentially doubles the damage of your spells and skills. So that's why having Vex on the board and leveled is so important. And then Vex's champion spell, also really good. You're glooming an enemy unit and you're drawing one. So even if you have Vex on the board, extra copies are very nice to have. So Chameleon's Necklace, again, I know we shouted out a lot, but it does work out quite well for Vex. All right, next up we have Vi. So for some rare relics you might want to use, first, Curator's Gatebreaker, -1 power, play I Strike the enemy Nexus. Pretty good for Vi. Her level up is I've struck for 10 or more damage in one strike, so you can definitely do that with the Gatebreaker. Pretty solid right there. Or you go for the Wriggle's Lantern, round end, grant me impact twice if I'm in hand. So you normally want your Vi sitting in hand anyways, so her just getting a bunch of that extra impact is pretty good. Or you go for the Scourge's Stash, Plunder at cost 2 less, just to try to get on the board a little bit earlier. For me, my default is definitely the Gatebreaker for your first rare relic though. As far as common relics to pair with it, Dreams of Yordles is pretty nice. The Spirit and Impact giving you a little bit of extra stats, so you can try to make sure you can hit for that 10 damage. Also Impact, Vi is kind of built around Impact as well, so that pairs quite well together. With that though, being able to get Overwhelm can really help your damage, so you can actually challenge a unit, hit them, have your extra damage be converted into damage on the Nexus from that Overwhelm, and then you also your Impact and your just leveled effect of when I strike a unit while attacking, deal 5 to the enemy Nexus, which is kind of the same thing as Impact almost. Just Overwhelm gives you a lot of extra damage, so that's also another good rare relic to pair with this. And then also Starchild Staff. With Vi, you are a weaker champion. You can have a hard time in some of those challenges or early adventures. So Starchild Staff can really just help out any champion, but especially some of the lower performing ones, be able to clear some of those adventures. All right, next up we have Viego. So first we have Stalker's Blade. When I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. You can also put Gatebreaker here. Now Viego, he scales up quite a lot from the Encroaching Mists. When I'm summoned, grant all allied Viegos and other Encroaching Mists everywhere 1/1. So throughout the game, you're trying to summon all these mists, and they'll be buffing up your Viego. So when he hits the board, he's normally going to have a lot more power than this. So you could go for a Gatebreaker to just really nuke the enemy Nexus, or you can go for a Stalker's Blade, try to strike, kill an enemy unit, and potentially then summon another mist. Troll King's Crown, this is something that once you get Viego to 4 stars, you won't need, but below that, very good to have. And then Corrupted Star Fragment support, kill my supported ally, grant me its keywords and stats. Another great way to buff up your Viego. And then each round, the first time another ally dies, summon a Encroaching Mist. So a great way to kill one of your own units to summon another mist, which can be very powerful and again, further buffs your Viego. Any of these would be very solid for your first rare relic. As far as some common relics to go with, so Overwhelm can be good if you're not getting it from another source, so that is decent. Or even trying to go for something simple like a Challenger, just to make sure you can grab an enemy unit and kill them. Can be very good, especially if you have Viego at his 3rd star power, so when you kill an enemy unit, you also summon an Encroaching Mist. Viego's really one though where the rare relics aren't as important for him, so he's one that's very flexible. Feel free to really choose whatever you want here, whatever way you want to play Viego. It's not like there's one that you really need to go one direction, that is, but if you want to just go for a pretty passive build, Z-Drive Prototype, very good to just gain some extra rerolls to try to make sure you get the right powers and support champions. Next up is Volibear. So we have Stalker's Blade. When I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. Very nice for just being able to get a extra kill, potentially get some more of your sigil generation going. You could do a Gatebreaker. He does have a lot of damage, so him just being able to hit the enemy Nexus pretty hard also can be pretty good. Also, Luden's Tempest. All of your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. Pretty solid. You already have some other spells and skills that deal damage, but Volibear, when you play him, play Relentless Storm 3 times, each one targeting a different random enemy or the enemy Nexus. That Relentless Storm, deal 4 to a unit, and this is going off 3 times. So this can really end up just killing a lot of the enemy board. With the Luden's Tempest, bringing it up to 5 damage. This really lets you just drop your Volibear and have him completely wipe the enemy board in most adventures. So quite solid. Also, when Volibear levels, play or attack, you're then playing those storms again. So I know it's one that kind of looks a little bit odd on Volibear, but Luden's Tempest is actually pretty good for him. As far as some common relics to go with, Ravenous Hydra can be fun when I'm summoned, deal 1 to all other enemies to again just further try to do your board wipe effect. Also helps increase the damage you've done for your level up, and if you get any kills you can generate some more sigils. Really for Volibear though, especially since he's so expensive, a lot of the common relics don't really make that much of an impact, so just going for something simple like Z-Drive Prototype to get some extra rerolls, especially can be good in the shop where you're trying to reroll for some other Titanic units, or just going for like Starchild Staff for that extra bit of sustain, or always just for Chameleon's Necklace just to try to make sure you can play your Volibear as soon as you stack up enough sigils. But for Volibear, kind of another one where the common relics aren't quite as impactful as many other champions. Yasuo is up next. So for your rare relics, we have Tempest Blade. When I level up, stun all enemies. Obviously fantastic. It is Yasuo's sword after all. And him being able to stun all enemies normally will just mean that he kills them all. So it's kind of a board wipe effect. So very good. Definitely the best rare relic to throw on if you have it. As far as another one, the Grand General's Counter Plan. Round start, create a fleeting copy of me in hand. So this is a little bit of an interesting one. Again, it can work as a safety net, so if your Yasuo dies, you then have another fleeting copy to play. But also, his champion spell is very good, but you can only use it if the enemy's attacking. So stun a attacking enemy. So really nice, gives you a lot of control and helps you be very defensive because you can just shut down enemy attacks for just 2 mana. So very solid, but normally every other round, it's not really going to be useful. But when it is useful, it's very useful. So still not as good as Tempest Blade, but definitely one that works out pretty well for you. As far as some rare relics, going for like a Banshee's Veil to protect your Yasuo can be pretty nice, especially if you're not running like the Grand General's Counter Plan. Also just going for like an Everfrost when I'm summoned to stun the strongest enemy to get another stun. Your Yasuo will then deal 2 damage or strike it if he's leveled. Also contributes to your level up. So again, pretty common or pretty good common relic. Really though, you need to do Chameleon's Necklace. Yasuo is very much your win condition. You really need him on the board, and if you don't play him, you're normally going to lose, which feels pretty bad. I've literally had games where Yasuo, I only had 2 copies of him, and it was the bottom 2 cards in my deck. Felt absolutely terrible. You really need your Yasuo on the board, so you need to make sure you have enough copies of him. If you have him on the board, having more copies of him is totally fine. His champion spell is awesome. So really, Chameleon's Necklace is the common relic you want to use pretty much all the time. All right, we're finally just about at the end. Been recording for like 2.5 hours at this point. We have Yuumi. So for Yuumi, your rare relics, what do you want to use first? Up first, Gale Force, absolutely fantastic. Scout, and then the round end, shuffle me into your deck. For Yuumi, as long as you're attached, relics only carry over their keywords and their stats. Everything else, all the card text, none of that carries over. So for Yuumi, you give a unit that Scout, and that's it, which is pretty great. You don't have any of this downside to it. So Scout feels fantastic, great to throw on your Yuumi and then give to another unit. Warhammer or just any stats, very good for your Yuumi as well, especially since most relics don't really work with your Yuumi. Now, as far as common relics, they're actually a lot more important for Yuumi because a lot of them are keywords, and for Yuumi, you're carrying those keywords over to whatever unit you are attached to. So going for like a spell shield in order to protect them a little bit until your Yuumi is leveled and can give them spell shield again, or going for something like the Dreams of Yordles, the Spirit and Impact, bringing over 2 solid keywords, especially with that Scout, because you'll be able to get that impact going off again, or even going for just like Quick Attack, Challenger, however you want your Yuumi to be built, whatever keywords you want to bring over to another unit. This is where you have a lot of flexibility, and yeah, common relics are much more important to Yuumi than on most other champions. So really play around with whatever common relics you feel like you're lacking, which is going to be very much based on how you want to play Yuumi. Now, if you want to go for consistency, going for like Gale Force plus Overwhelm is very helpful, but you have ways of, through the Poros you're generating at the start of the game, potentially having Elusive or Overwhelm already. So if you want to then get rid of your Overwhelm and maybe go for like stats of +1 and Fearsome, or go for like, again, the Spirit and Impact. Since this does give you 2 keywords, it does feel a little bit better than most of the other common relics. And again, for Yuumi, if you don't have the Gale Force, you probably just want to either go for 2 common relics or just go for a stat relic for your rare relic. There's not that many keyword relics for the rare relics. All right, that was it. That was a lot of work. Took a long time to do this video. So if it helped you at all, a like and subscribe is greatly appreciated. Now, we didn't touch on any epic relics here because this is supposed to be for newer players and lower level champions, specifically champions level 13 and lower. And I don't really expect people to equip their champion with a epic relic before level 13, so weren't really talking about them here. Now, I'll probably do a follow-up video talking about the next level brackets, so definitely like and subscribe if you want to see that. Again, thank you all for your continued support, and I hope you have a great day.